The Vantress hold had been in continuous coalition service for 74 years. It was one of 11 ships in the fleet that had never been lost, never been decommissioned, never been renamed after a disaster or a scandal the way lesser ships sometimes were. In 74 years, it had been crewed by officers drawn from 6-member species and commanded, without a single exception in its service record, by a non-human. No one aboard had needed to think about that fact before. There had never been a reason to. The absence of humans in the command chair was not a rule written anywhere. It was simply the shape the ship had always had, the way a building has a shape before anyone asks who designed it. Fleet assignment orders do not usually generate discussion before they arrive. This one did. Word had reached the Vantress hold 2 weeks before Commander Alden Voss did, and by the time his shuttle docked, most of the senior staff had already formed an opinion, and most of those opinions were being kept carefully to themselves. His file had made the trip ahead of him. The assignment board's junior officer read it once, then read it again, because the first pass had produced a survival percentage that did not match any convoy escort record in the board's database, and numbers that do not match anything are usually typing errors. This one was not. The verification request went out to Zenith Corridor Command, came back confirmed, and was quietly re-requested a second time by a different officer who assumed the first confirmation had been a formality rather than a real check. It came back confirmed again. 14 years. The Zenith Corridor was 3 light-years of contested space between 2 rival trade blocks, with no permanent coalition fleet presence, no standing patrol, and no guaranteed response time if a convoy called for help. Ships that ran that corridor ran it because someone had to, and volunteered for it because the pay reflected the risk. Alden Voss had run it for 14 years, first as a militia escort pilot and later as the commanding officer of an ad hoc defense flotilla that the coalition had, in its own paperwork, never quite acknowledged existed until the exchange program absorbed his service record and made him, on paper, a coalition officer eligible for fleet assignment. He did not mention any of this when he came aboard the Vantress hold. He reported to his quarters, reviewed the maintenance logs for the previous 6 months, cross-referenced them against the part's requisition history, and was on the bridge 9 hours ahead of his first scheduled shift. Reading sensor calibration reports that the previous watch officer had filed without comment, and it turned out without much attention either. The bridge crew noticed him before they were introduced to him. That was its own kind of introduction. Lieutenant Commander HFY Wren had served as the Vantress hold's second officer for 6 years. He was Thalran, from a species whose officers historically made up a significant portion of the Coalition's command structure, and by every account on the ship, spoken and unspoken. He had expected the captaincy that instead went to a human whose service record came from a corridor, the fleet's own charts marked in the color, reserved for regions with no guaranteed rescue. Wren did not say anything critical about the assignment. He did not need to. The senior staff meeting scheduled for Voss's 4th day aboard would do the saying for him. Admiral Petra O'Ennis attended by transmission, present for the formal handover of command authority. She had signed Voss's assignment order 11 weeks earlier, and in the interval between signing it and the ship reaching its current position, she had requested the full Zenith Corridor engagement logs from Corridor Command, not because she doubted the verification, but because she had learned, across a long career, that some officers arrive at a new post and are believed immediately, and others arrive and are required to prove something that was already true before they walked in the door. She had a guess about which kind of arrival this was going to be, and she wanted the proof already queued when it was needed. The meeting opened with routine transition items, supply schedules, crew rotation, the maintenance backlog Voss had already flagged that morning. Wren waded through all of it with the patience of someone who has already decided which moment in the meeting he intends to use. "A courtesy question, Commander," Wren said, when the routine items were finished. For the crew's confidence, if you don't mind. He said it the way certain officers say things they have already decided the answer will not satisfy them, with the timing and tone of someone who has rehearsed the delivery more than the question itself. How many vessels have you personally lost in command? Several officers at the table found something to look at on their consoles. It was not a hostile silence. It was the particular kind of quiet that settles over a room when a hierarchy that everyone already privately agreed on is about to be confirmed out loud. Admiral O.N.E. said nothing. She had been waiting for a version of this question since before Voss's shuttle had docked. "That's a fair thing to want to know," Voss said, and he said it like someone who meant it, without any detectable edge underneath the words. "Are you asking about the corridor convoys specifically, or the total across my full commission?" Wren had prepared for one answer, not for a clarifying question that split it in two. "The total," he said, after a pause that was very slightly too long. Voss gave a number. The room's reaction was not the reaction rooms have to bad news. It was the reaction a room has when a number refuses to fit inside the framework being used to receive it. Wren's expression did not change all at once. It changed the way something changes when it is being recalculated in real time. First the eyes, then the set of the shoulders, several seconds behind the number itself. "That figure is lower than fleet average for a fully unsupported corridor route," Wren said. "Considerably lower." "It's lower than fleet average for a desk posting too," Voss said. "That's most of what the number is telling you." "I'd like to see the basis for it," Wren said. It was framed as a request. Everyone at the table understood it as a challenge. Admiral O.N.E.'s opened her transmission log at exactly that moment, which told at least two of the more perceptive officers present that she had been holding it open ready for several minutes already. "I have the full Zenith engagement record queued," she said. "Cargo manifests, casualty reports, salvage recovery data. Since the question of basis has come up, I think the staff should review it directly rather than take anyone's summary. Mine included." It was not phrased as an order. Nobody at the table treated it as anything else. The footage that followed was not dramatic in the way fleet training simulations were dramatic, with their clean framing and scored tension. It was documentary and administrative. Raw sensor logs, manifest numbers, salvage recovery timestamps, filed in the flat, unglamorous language nobody dresses up because nobody expects anyone outside the corridor to read it. The first case study showed a 4-transport convoy with a single escort vessel intercepted by a raider wing, rated at 3 times the escort's listed threat class. All 4 transports reached their destination. The escort took hull damage severe enough to require 11 days in dock. No cargo was lost. No casualties were recorded beyond minor injuries during the engagement itself. The second case study showed a 2-escort formation running interference for a damaged transport that could not maintain convoy speed, holding position against 6 raider vessels for 40 minutes until a scheduled resupply ship, unrelated to the engagement, happened to arrive early and tip the balance. Voss's log entry for that engagement was 4 sentences long and contained no adjectives. By the 4th case study, Wren had stopped asking follow-up questions. By the 7th, the smiles that had been present around the table at the start of the meeting were gone from every face, replaced by the particular stillness of people doing arithmetic they had not expected to need to do. 14 years. 11 fully logged engagements, dozens more referenced only by manifest number, because the corridor's data retention policy did not require full logs for anything below a certain threat threshold. Across the complete record, no transports lost. 2 escort vessels listed as decommissioned after extended recovery, not destroyed. The 11th case study was a night engagement. 2 escorts against 6 raiders in low visibility conditions, both escorts recovered, cargo intact. Wren watched it in full silence, the expression of someone whose recalculation had stopped being about the number and started being about what the number implied he had misunderstood for 6 years. "The corridor doesn't have standing fleet backup," Wren said when the footage ended. It was not phrased as a question. It was phrased as a fact he was saying out loud for the first time to see how it sounded. "No," Voss said. "It doesn't." "Then the margin for error is smaller," Voss said. "You don't get backup out there. You get good habits instead, and you get very disciplined about which risks you take twice." He did not expand on it. He had not come to the meeting to build a case for himself, and having one built for him by the admiral's transmission log was not something he seemed inclined to comment further on either. He gathered the maintenance reports he had brought with him, the ones the meeting had run long enough to delay him from reviewing on schedule. Wren stood when the transmission ended. He stopped at the door, not turning around immediately, the way someone stops when they have one more sentence left to finish out loud before they can consider the matter closed in their own head. "The fleet average number and the corridor number," he said, "are different by a lot more than I would have guessed 6 years into this posting." "They usually are," Voss said. "Most people only see the fleet average. The corridor doesn't file reports anyone reads unless they go looking." "I'll be going forward," Wren said, and left without further comment. It was not a defeat that required witnesses, and Voss did not treat it as one. Wren had asked a question expecting a particular kind of answer and had received a more complete education instead. And what he did with that education in private was his own business, not the room's, and certainly not something Voss intended to follow him out the door to discuss. Voss stayed a moment longer, running through the maintenance backlog with 2 of the junior engineering officers who had stayed behind, rather than filing out with the rest of the staff. It was, by a wide margin, the part of the meeting he seemed most engaged in. "Commander," Admiral O'Enny said, before the channel closed, "I pulled those corridor records the week I signed your assignment order. I've been holding them ready since." "I'd noticed the timing," Voss said. "I imagined you would. Can I ask why you didn't just brief the staff yourself ahead of the meeting? Would have saved a few minutes." "You could have," O'Enny said. "But then it would have been my account of your record, not the record itself. I've found crews trust the second thing considerably more than the first, especially crews inclined not to trust either one at the start." Voss considered that and did not argue with it. "Fair," he said. "There's also this," O'Enny's added. "Lieutenant Commander Wren is a capable officer. 6 years as second officer on a ship like this doesn't happen by accident. I'd rather he arrive at his own conclusions about you by seeing the record than have them handed to him by me or by you. A conclusion someone reaches themselves tends to stay reached." "You could have told me that going in," Voss said. "Would have saved me wondering why you cued the footage before I'd even said anything worth defending." "I could have," O'Enny said. "But then you'd have walked in already braced for it, and I wanted to see how you'd answer a question you didn't know was coming. That told me more than the footage did, honestly." He nodded once, acknowledging the point without needing to say anything further about it, and closed the channel. Down the corridor, the ship's engines were 3 hours into a diagnostic cycle he had ordered on his first day aboard, the same cycle the previous watch had let run 4 days over its scheduled interval without flagging it. He went to check on it himself, rather than send someone to check on his behalf, which was, by that point, exactly what the crew who had been watching him for 4 days had started to expect him to do. In the Vantress holds command log, under the entry logged for the senior staff transition meeting, Admiral Petra O'Ennies wrote 3 words, closing the file before anyone else on the staff distribution list had finished processing everything they had just watched.